Okay, I want to talk. Okay, I want to talk about square roots for just a brief minute here. We're not going to do much with them right now, but when we get to the end of the chapter, we're going to learn how to simplify them. But right now, the only thing I want to do is talk about the notation. When you have a square root for just about every number that there is, every positive number, or I guess I should say non-negative number, but for just about all of those things, there are going to be two square roots. There's going to be a positive one and a negative one. For example, the square root of 4 is plus 2 and minus 2. Usually we don't think about the negative one enough, but it's there. Well, if I want to take the square root of a number, how can I denote that, and how can I, call attention to the fact that there are two? Let's say I wanted to take square root of 3, and I can't write them out like that because square root of 3 is a big ugly decimal and don't want to write it out. Well, if you write plus or minus, that means both square roots. If you don't put anything at all in the front, that means the principal or positive square root. And if you just put a negative in front, that means the negative square root. A couple things about square roots. First of all, remember, don't try to square root a negative number. That's a bad thing. Also, one other thing is, and this is something that I always thought was kind of confusing for me, square roots and squareds, they're supposed to be inverses, but they don't always cancel. Let me show you what I mean. For example, let's say I have 2. Well, let's use 3 because otherwise I'll have too many 2's. So let's say I have 3 and I want to square it and square root it. Okay? So 3 squared is 9 and square root of 9 is 3. And because the square root was already here at the start of the problem, I just am talking about the positive one right now. When you're solving a problem yourself and you take the square root, you'll write plus or minus, but I'm saying for argument's sake that our square root is already there, okay? So it's squared and square rooted. We have our positive square root. So, the square and the square root cancel. That's pretty nice. But let's look at another situation. Let's say I have negative 3 and I want to square that first and then square root it. Well, negative 3 squared is 9 again. And then, because it's negative 3 times negative 3, and then square root of 9 is just 3. So I started with a negative 3, and I ended with a positive 3. So that certainly doesn't cancel. And it even gets worse if you switch order and you put the square root on the inside. So if I try to square root negative 3 and then square it, try to put that in your calculator, you can't even do it unless you let me use imaginary numbers. So squared and square root don't always cancel. An important thing to be aware of. We're going to do a lot more with the squared and square root as we go along. If squared and square root don't cancel, what do? Well, most of the time, I will tell you on the problems we're doing, you can assume that the variable is positive. Because if the number inside is positive, then yes, they will always cancel. But if the number inside could be negative, then we say that when I square something and square root it, I actually get the absolute value. Because remember, absolute value gets rid of negative signs. So I started with a negative sign, I ended without one. And in fact, that's how some people actually define the absolute value. Absolute, ooh, I spelled that terribly. Okay, get rid of that. Let's go back and get rid of that. We can do that. Boom, boom. Doesn't want to go away. Absolute value, well, you know how to spell absolute value. I probably spelled it for you once already. Anyhow, I did spell it earlier. Absolute value. I was actually the Battelle Elementary School junior spelling champion for the 6th grade back in 1980. So, pretty, oh, how far I've fallen since then. But anyhow, that's square root.